to an extended homeopathic hit. We've got Lisa Rooney. You know her from Vibrant Life Integrative Coaching. VibrantLife247.com is the shortest URL to get to her. And we always have her linked up every day. And she's supportive of our message of health, freedom, and healing liberty and the return of homeopathy to its rightful place, as well as we do an extended homeopathic hit today, hitting what? Nux Vomica, as well as Gelsemium. I wonder if Gelsemium is a remedy that could work for people that want vengeance or perceive it.
Maybe. Maybe. I think I think you are spot on, Robert. I think you're spot on. And your command of the understanding of kind of everything that's going on and being able to pick it apart is just always so impressive to me.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think that, there is what I've talked about our journey as natural healers, if I can call us that. Let's just put that broad category out there, homeopaths or otherwise, is that we have been under the proverbial gun from government regulators at the federal, state, and local levels, as if we are the enemy causing all kinds of potential damage, injury, and illness and death. And quite the opposite is the truth. In fact, if we go back to the dawn of homeopathy, what was it that motivated Dr. Samuel Hahnemann? The medicines of his day were so toxic, they were worse than the disease in many cases.
Yep.
So this is not new.
Yes. Yeah, I find it such an exciting time right now with everything that's happening. It's just such an exciting time. And I was talking with a group of my girlfriends, a couple weeks ago, and we were just talking about kind of everything that's going on, out in the world today, and how when we were bringing our kids up, we were fighting internally in our families, within our family systems, because we were raising our kids outside of the grain. We were doing things, we were not vaccinating, we were we were using homeopathy, and we were using supplements and herbs, and taking our kids to the chiropractor when they had an ear infection and all this stuff, and all of the grandparents thought that we were going to kill our children, that they were going to catch a disease and they were going to die. So we were fighting that internal fight, and then we were also pushing up against the doctors, of our day. And we were really but it was all real kind of underground, I guess you could say. And there were pockets of us we just kind of found each other. We had our communities, we were working our plans, and we were just opting out.
Yeah.
And where we were having the most struggle was within our internal families. And now these moms of today, they're fighting the bigger things. And thank goodness for RFK, because he's been on this journey. I've been following him for 20 years. And if anybody just takes a moment and listens to him, he is one of the most rational human beings that I've ever listened to.
Yeah. And do you sense a desire for revenge from him? I'm asking honestly and sincerely about these emotional reactions in the mainstream press. They're kind of freaking out. I'm thinking they might need some emotional support remedies.
Yeah, it's delusional. That's what we need to be looking up, delusions of.
Yes,
exactly. To see because it does not make any sense. It does not make any sense. Luckily, within my family, we don't have any major tension, and I've got medical people in my family, but we're very respectful of each other. Yes. I've raised my children, as I've talked about on this show, I've raised my children outside of the medical paradigm, and my kids are amazing. And my family sees how great my kids are, how healthy they are, how smart they are. And so I think we have this natural respect for each other. But for those people who have families that don't, it's hard to navigate that conversation, and I would just encourage people at Thanksgiving dinner, tomorrow, to just be really even keeled, just be real curious.
Yeah.
We don't need to defend, because the truth rises to the surface.
Yes.
So really just getting curious about, wow, I can see how scared you are. I can see how, how much you think that this is going to really end poorly. But, it'll be interesting. We'll just have to watch and see what happens.
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't want anybody to be a doormat for abuse, right? If people, because I brought that up at the opening, Lisa, because, I know many of my friends in this journey, many in health food stores, many in natural products companies that, have learned to have to walk on eggshells. and be
Yes.
careful. One of the classic examples of this is I share some from many years ago, going to the natural product industry trade shows. They're huge, absolutely huge, despite all of the obstacles for this industry and everything in it to succeed against the drug industry that has a monopoly and a stranglehold on our regulators.
Mhm.
We've seen tremendous growth. And I remember one time going to a dietary supplement company and praising them on their product. And it was a mineral product, chromium specific, in a whole food form that I was seeing in people that I was helping a complete 100% reversal of type 2 diabetes in relatively short order. I was like praising them and thanking them. And it was like you would have thought that I was like, a terrorist suddenly coming into their booth.
Yeah.
They're looking around. It's like, no, it doesn't. No, thinking that I was an FDA agent, right? And
Wow.
we think about the paranoia, right, of Eastern Bloc, Soviet Union type countries where everybody was an informant on everybody.
Mhm.
Within our industry, that's how they had to look around. It's like, are you entrapping me that I might admit that my product can actually help somebody overcome a quote unquote disease?
Yep.
Now, of course, homeopathy is regulated since the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938, passed in 1939, as a drug system, although no side effects. It doesn't have to go through the pre-marketing stuff that the quote unquote allopathic drugs do. But then again, we're not killing anybody with our remedies either. But they circumvented, I think, the FDA, the will and intent of Congress and that act. They didn't overturn it to really throw a wrench in homeopathy's growth. And
Mhm.
that's where Jonathan E. Moore and the ANH and others are coming in and going in. We got a maha opportunity to protect it and put homeopathy back in its rightful place alongside anything and everything in freedom, not in monopoly.
It's so exciting. And there's a surge. And, the will of the people, they're going to find a way because I think we have an innate sense about, just being healthy, surviving. And my mentor talks about, the drug therapy, the pharmacotherapy. She calls it chemical intervention, chemical therapy,
Mhm.
as opposed to the natural therapy. And, I think that most people are have woken up and literally have woken up, not woke, but woken up, and are awake. Their eyes are awake. Their eyes
Yeah.
are open and they're awake and they're seeing that there's a better way. There really is a better way. There's such a much more gentle, better way. And we're not even talking about like I'm talking about homeopathy because it's such a gentle way.
Yes.
But this whole movement, um, I think what we don't realize is that we have become such, or what we are realizing, and the conversation is around how unhealthy we've become as a
Mm.
society.
Yeah.
And most people will say, well, it's just willpower. Like, the obesity epidemic in our society is unbelievable. I mean, it is. We should be ashamed as a nation. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And
In the
people,
meantime, what is the promotion from the current administration is, hey, let's get coverage through the insurance system for Ozempic and Wegovy
right,
injections.
right,
It's astonishing. Yeah.
right. And something like that gets. I mean, who's going to pay for that? You, me, everybody else is going to pay for that. And you have this whole conversation about willpower. You should just have willpower, and but look around at our environment. Like
Mhm.
even the best of willpower, we have destructive food everywhere, everywhere.
Yeah.
And our children, they haven't developed that willpower. And I remember it even when my kids, we'd go to the, it always made me crazy. We'd go to the dentist and they'd
Mhm.
get a lollipop.
Right. Like, oh, you want to ensure that we come back for more, don't you? Yeah. Look, I was talking also about emotions, and I know that's one of the areas I love that you bring to our
Mhm.
homeopathic discussions, right?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful and important part of it. And I'm a guy. I'm like, what emotions, right? And yet the walking on eggshells concept,
Mhm.
that's an emotional state. That's a very like I'm afraid. Why am I walking on eggshells? Because I'm afraid that somebody might react in a way that I will have to engage, and it's traumatic, right? There may be a little bit of PTSD there. And I don't know if Gelsemium fits as we talk about it, but again, there's a lot of aspects to the remedies we want to discuss today as people are going back home for the holidays and going to spend time with family. And some of the controversy is like on some part of our political left says you should not talk to anybody that disagrees with you, right?
Yeah.
And then everybody else goes, that's just ridiculous. We don't have to agree on everything. We can enjoy our time together.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if we're dealing with these emotions, I want to talk to you about some of these remedies, including the ones we have planned today.
Yeah. So last month we talked about Gelsemium and we talked about the physicals. And I want to give a shout out to Beth who emailed and said, "Hey,
Hi,
you
Beth.
guys forgot the you forgot the mentals." So we're gonna go through the mentals on Gelsemium and then we'll talk about Nux Vomica. So just to recap, Gelsemium, the physical aspects of that, it's the classic flu with chills. Remember those 4 Ds: dizzy, droopy, drowsy, and drained. Great fatigue and weakness on all levels, and weakness after a fright or hearing bad news. That's kind of the physical aspects of Gelsemium. So we're heading into the flu season. Everybody should have this in their homeopathic kit.
Yes.
So let's talk about the emotional aspects. I actually love this remedy from the emotional aspects. I did not understand this remedy for a while because I just was looking at it from the standpoint of flu. But when I really got into the emotional aspects, I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And this is one of the top remedies that I use in my practice because
Mhm.
I'm working with people who oftentimes everybody has some level of trauma in
Yes.
their history. There's, when you get into the timeline, there's an ailments from bad news, and then they've never kind of been well since, or that's sort of been the etiology, and now they're having all these physical issues. But the old texts describe weakness. So Gelsemium has this aspect of weakness, and the old texts describe the weakness as actually cowardice. That's what they were talking about when they talked about weakness. And
Mhm.
this was given to soldiers that were going into battle to help provide them courage. Isn't
Right.
that cool?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. And Lisa, this is the funny thing is I'm, talking about the dichotomy of the man and the woman, the male and the female, like emotion or not. I'm a little bit teasing because yes, Gelsemium for me, I entered that remedy because of its emotional reality and
Uh-huh.
not the physical. That's funny how yet you bring. I just love that. I just love that so much because we hit the flu of Gelsemium and the physical, and yet my entry was more or less the emotional, the fear, the what you're talking about, the
Yeah.
courage. So it's
Yeah.
so awesome.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So we think about the Gelsemium from the mental emotional when we've got nervous conditions that happen before a major event. So and your body is physically responding to it. So you might get weakness, you might have diarrhea, there might be trembling, etc. All of that for me, the way I look at that is anticipatory anxiety. You're anticipating something happening, a big event, and then your body starts to respond to it. And it kind of starts to sort of shut down. You get weak, you have that trembling, you have that diarrhea. So we think about this for stage fright, anxiety before tests, before interviews, before any
Going to
kind of
the
performance,
dentist.
going to the dentist, any kind of appointments, any event, even so. I actually, self disclosure here, I actually took Gelsemium prior to our first couple of conversations because I was just a little nervous.
I never
I
think
didn't,
of myself as someone that would induce the need for Gelsemium, but hey, what can I
yeah,
say? Big
no, no,
strapping masculine intimidator.
but it's that kind of nervousness, that performance sort of nervousness.
Right.
And your mind starts to feel a little sluggish. You might have difficulty concentrating. You're afraid you're going to forget. Um, you know that it's that anticipation that then kind of starts to shut things down. So this can happen. That sluggishness in your mind can often happen after bad news. So you've gotten a big shock or a big trauma, or you've gotten some bad news, and then all of a sudden you kind of start to shut down, and it's hard to recover. Fear of an event, and then again think flu and illness, where you've got the dullness of mind. So
Mhm.
I think about this a lot for students that study for hours and hours for a big test, and they're worried about it, and they're really kind of over preparing, and then as soon as they close their books and they start thinking about their test, it's like they can't recall, and they get really worried, and all this anticipation about, oh my gosh, I'm not going to do well on this test.
Mhm.
So we call that exam funk. You just kind of like your mind shuts
Right.
off.
Well, the fear is a big part of this remedy's emotional picture.
Mhm.
There are obviously distinctions and differences in the kinds of fear, but that's what you're elaborating beautifully on. Some of the things that would indicate that use of Gelsemium, why that may be the strongest remedy indicated for what's going on right now, in addition to the stuff we talked about last month.
Yeah, it's really the first line that I think of for anticipatory anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the other keynotes is there's shaking or trembling. And that can come on especially after bad news or in anticipation of something. And I'm going to share a story in just a minute about that. So paralysis is also a keynote of Gelsemium, and we can see this on the physical and on the emotional. So, and I'm not talking like, classic paralysis. It shows up in kind of this loss of motor control. So your muscles get weak, and you might be so fatigued and so weak that you can't lift up your arms, or you can't kind of move your body. You're slumped over in your chair, or you're studying and you're just like, my brain is dying and I'm so tired. You just kind of are slumping over in your chair. You might experience diarrhea as a result of the anticipation of the event, like I talked about. So, you're so nervous that you just kind of have to keep going to the bathroom. You're sort of paralyzed by your fear. You can't make the slightest effort to think. These are all these keynotes of Gelsemium.
So should we like add that to the gravy tomorrow in the turkey?
Right.
In case?
I think probably everyone on the left that was really disappointed about the election probably could have used this remedy.
Mm-hmm.
Because
and I think still can, because if they're worried about what's going to happen, like I'm going to be, it's vengeance right now time,
yeah,
that could help calm them, maybe get them into a state where they can begin to think critically and clearly, as opposed to
right.
being that mental and emotional deer in the headlight scenario.
Yeah, because there's all this anticipatory anxiety and fear about what's going to happen next. So you're spot on. This could be a great remedy in that scenario.
Yeah.
And of course the complaints from bad news. So any kind of shocking event, a sudden loss, your son didn't make the team, your daughter didn't get the promotion, and then you have symptoms that come on after that. So, again, this is a remedy that I use quite frequently in some of the custom formulas that I do for my clients for shock and trauma and grief. When I'm looking at that etiology, where did it all start? Where was that point where they got that bad news, or they, some kind of shocking event, and then they were never able to really recover from that.
Yeah. So should we ask like homework, put homework assignments out there for everybody going to Thanksgiving holiday or hosting it?
Yeah.
At least bring up homeopathy once in conversation. Wouldn't that be
Right.
cool?
Right.
That's a
I
good
love it.
place. Like,
I love
do you
it.
know what homeopathy is? Or, hey, did you hear about gelsemium? What is that?
Yeah.
Then you say yellow jasmine. Oh, that's not very intimidating sounding.
Right. Well, let me tell you a couple stories on Gelsemium, and then we'll talk about Nux Vomica, which I think everybody should bring to
Big
Thanksgiving
time.
dinner. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my daughter, she's a senior at Belmont University in Tennessee. She's studying in the music business industry, and when she was applying to college, she actually she applied to. There were only a handful of universities in the country that had the major that she wanted, and so she was applying, and she was getting prepared for her, like she had to do kind of an interview, performance kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so one of the schools that she applied to was Berklee School of Music. And she didn't really understand the prestige of this school. And when she kind of started to understand, wow, this is a really top school in the country, all the nerves started coming up. And so about a couple hours before, maybe it was about 2 hours before her thing, it was all COVID, so it was all, Zoom. She came to me, she's like, Mom, I'm so nervous. Like her stomach was all trembling, and she was having to go to the bathroom, and she was just really, really nervous. So we started with Gelsemium, and I started with the 30 with her. I think 30 Cs are a great place to start, especially for acute things. So we did a 30C. It was pretty high on the intensity rating. So for all your listeners, I love to use an intensity rating. 1 to 10, 10, the symptom is stopping your life. 1, it's barely even bothering you. And that helps me know how frequently I need to dose. So she was probably at a 7 or an 8. And, so I knew I needed to be dosing much more frequently. Plus we had a short window. So I was maybe dosing her every 10 minutes or so. We got about 4, maybe 5 doses in. She was starting to feel better, but it wasn't really moving the needle as much as I wanted. And so I bumped her up to a 200. I said, let's get the 200 in you. And boy, she took that 200, and it was like, I literally saw the tension
Melt
just
away, right?
fade,
Yeah.
just melt away.
Yeah.
And then, she popped into her interview and she did a fantastic job. She did get accepted. She chose not to go there, and decided to go to Belmont instead. So,
Wow. No,
yeah.
that's a great example of how it works. And listen, I just on the potency discussion, if you don't have a 30C or a 30X and you have a 10X, use it
Mhm.
more frequently or a 15. I mean, that's the point. I don't want people to get so hung up on the remedies, but I do caution people when they go to the higher potency. We've discussed
Mhm.
this before that I really want you to make sure you got the help or you're skilled enough to match it better so that you'll succeed. I don't want people to take a remedy and go, oh, did nothing happen, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons, and other things are called aggravations or healing crises. We might be able to mention a little bit about what that could entail or how that manifests. But I am invested in, and I know you are, to demystify a lot of the stuff so it's not so strange. Or even, I need Gelsemium to take the remedy Gelsemium because I'm a little intimidated.
Yeah, yeah. And so for your listeners, when it comes to potency, the way that I think about potency is the lower potencies versus the higher potencies. The higher potency is not necessarily stronger, it deeper. You want to think it
Mm.
works deeper in your system. So, that's why when we get to higher potencies, we want to know what we're doing because it's going to work deeper in the system, and it might bring things up that then we have to handle homeopathically. It's not a big deal. We just have to handle it. It might induce that Herring's law of cures where we have some old symptoms that come up because it's gotten deep enough into the system and now it's pulling up some old symptoms. And if you don't understand that, it's really scary because you're like, "Oh my gosh, this remedy brought back my whatever, my eczema." And now, that's a really scary thing. So, don't think in terms of high potencies as stronger. Think of them
Nice.
as working deeper in your system.
Working deeper. Yeah,
Mhm.
and in the appropriateness, if you will, when you're taking a case as a homeopath, is you have the capacity to go very deep if you have the time, which not many doctors of any kind do anymore. It's like 3-minute medicine allopathically, but even the acceleration of homeopathy and the interaction is somewhat I just don't, it doesn't honor some of that origin point, but life has sped up. We acknowledge that. And perhaps we have some technology they didn't have to speed the selection, but I still don't want to ever overwhelm our experience, our
Mhm.
being present energetically with someone else to get that intuitive nudge, which is so important for, I think, real healing to occur. It's not just for women or mom's intuition, but anybody can access that with practice. And that is a part of the art, if you will, beyond the science of knowing a remedy, for instance.
Right. And this is why I've designed my packages so that people are working with me over a long period of time. Because as we work deeper in the system, things come up. I'm very focused on the mental emotional because the body, the physical stuff, there's always an underlying mental emotional component. So, I'm very focused on that within my practice because I'm working with people that have anxiety and emotional trauma and PTSD and stress and overwhelm and all of the things. And so, I've designed my packages so that when we get the remedies that they need, and then they've got the coaching support as those emotions come up or as other symptoms come up. Because I don't want to just have a one-off session and then just call me when you're ready the next time.
Yeah.
I want longevity as a healer. It's important to me to make sure that I'm supporting my clients in a way that they are moving forward in their progress.
Sure,
And
and it's always
yeah,
too a wonderful thing when you're able to so-called graduate them to,
yeah,
you've accomplished a major thing, and now you can decide to go further, or you can go, hey, you know what? That major issue that you brought to me, you're looking great. How you feeling? You see that, and uh, I have to bring this up from the allopathic side of things. They're concerned when that happens that they'll never have another patient ever. I mean, they work in a poverty consciousness, the allopathic monopoly. Like if we actually get people well, then who will need us, right? There's
right.
always going to be people that in need of healers, even allopathic doctors. So the beauty of, I believe, of homeopathy and what you do is like, I'm excited as can be when somebody overcomes a major, obstacle that they've had in their life, physically or emotionally. And therefore, guess what? People are going to go, do you know that Lisa Rooney gal? I heard about her. She helped me. You're going to be like, I don't have enough time to meet all the needs of all these people. That's why we need more
Right.
homeopaths too.
Yep. Bring it on. I'm
Yeah.
I'm that will be an exciting day. Yes. And
Mm.
I've actually graduated two clients in the past couple of months. It was such a great thing. I was like, I would love to keep working with you, but you don't really need me. You just don't. So now you just call me when something new comes up. Yeah.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Now, let's go. Super Don, if you can bring up Alicia's website, vibrantlife247.com. She's, once again, I want to make sure y'all hear this clearly coming into the holiday season. If you're feeling it now or into the new year, a lot of New Year's resolutions, you might get help or want help and you've been waiting for the right time. If you go there, you can also find the options on coaching or support, right?
Mhm.
Do we click on the work with me tab
Work
on
with
that
me.
page?
Yes, the
Okay.
work.
So
Yeah.
if we click on the work with me tab at vibrantlife247.com, you're going to see you can book a discovery call with Lisa. I'm just going to read it from the website. I've got it up now. Super Don's got it. Total vibrancy coaching and homeopathic healing program, soul healing, healing and trauma release sessions, homeopathic consults, homeopathic study groups. And you have offered a very special offer for the RSB show family. Anybody that listens to this show, watches it, whatever, and you want to avail yourself and reach out to Lisa for help, what is it that you're going to offer something special for them?
Yes, just mention that you heard about me on the RSB show, and you will get $100 off either a homeopathic package or a coaching package.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you guys will save a little bit, but you've got such value here. And I'm grateful that you would offer that, such kindness for the folks that are here looking to go to the next step. If I had all the time in the world, it's like you always, hey, could I clone myself? No, but there are reasons that you can't do everything. That's why we need other people.
Yes, and there's so many of us
Yeah.
that are on the ready.
Mhm.
So let me. I want to share two other stories about Gelsemium, and then let's move on to Nux Vomica. Sound good?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So because of that great weakness and fatigue, okay, this is actually a remedy that I use even when I'm not coming down with the flu, or even if it's not like after a bad ailments from bad news or anything like that, where I just wake up and for whatever reason, I'm just super, super tired that day. I can't gather my thoughts. I need to I've got all this whole project list of things to do. And after I get done with one and I'm like, gosh, I feel like I need to go take a nap.
You're
I
describing me today.
Yes, yes. So a dose of Gelsemium, and I like it in a 200 for that particular case.
Mhm.
But everybody should start with a 30 and just try a 30 and see, because you'll kind of get to, as you use the remedies, you'll get to know there's certain remedies and certain potencies that just work better for you particularly.
Yeah.
So for me, that's a Gelsemium 200. And it's remarkable. It gets me through the day.
Excellent.
So yeah.
Excellent.
So then I had a client, she had to address a very harsh boss. She was in this working environment. Her boss was, just very harsh. Lots of big details there. And she she noticed that every time she went to address her boss, she would like have all this anxiety. She'd have to go to the bathroom and she would tremble inside. Like that was her big
Mhm.
keynote that she expressed to me. She's like, I don't think anybody else in the meeting can see it, but I'm just like trembling inside. So I was like, aha, there's that trembling, that keynote of Gelsemium. So we equipped her with Gelsemium that she would take prior to the meetings with her boss.
Mm.
And what this did was this enabled her to go into the meetings, make the recommendations or make requests, and she really wasn't struggling so much with the fear. Now, the challenge she had was this was what we call a maintaining cause. So
Mhm.
she was in this job. She had to deal with this boss every single day. The cause of her fear and her anticipatory anxiety was maintaining. So she was also a coaching client. So we worked, over the time that I worked with her, she had Gelsemium kind of on the ready and she was using it pretty regularly. But we also did a lot of time learning about why she had kind of put herself in that scenario in the first place. We did a lot of work on her core values. So she really understood what what would be a working scenario that really aligned with her values. And that helped her find the courage. It was like these aha moments. Oh my gosh, I can't even believe I took this job in the beginning because this doesn't even align with my values. And then we, over the course of time we worked together, we kind of navigated how she would eventually leave that situation, which she eventually did.
Oh my gosh.
So
So I was thinking as you're speaking about our family of perspectives, our holistic family, right? Many of my friends, a lot of them, have been invited to become part of potentially the government, HHS, various parts of the government. And as I said, if I call it fear or trepidation, is that we've been deceived so many times
Yeah.
by promises of, yeah, we're gonna incorporate and integrate you guys. You're welcome here, and then find out that they really never intended to do so. I perceive that we do have an opportunity like we've never had before.
Mhm.
But going into it, we might carry these thought forms, these engrams, these fears because of this experience. I think Gelsemium is one of those remedies, y'all. Any of you, my friends, you're listening or watching, if you're going into that environment and you can sense that emotional reality,
Yeah.
have that Gelsemium at the ready.
Absolutely. Great point. Great point. That's exciting. And if anybody uses it, let us know. Let us
Yes,
know. I really want to hear the feedback there.
please do. And
Yeah.
again, thank you, Beth, for helping to stimulate that
That
visit
conversation.
today, right? Even deeper. So
So,
time for Nux Vomica. I mean,
time
there's
for Nux Vomica.
never a bad time for it, but there's bigger times for it. And I think the holiday season, the indulgences we're about to engage in, if we haven't already, and more. So let's go.
Yep. Okay. So the keynote here with Nux Vomica is too much. Everything is too much. So I'm going to talk about the mentals first, then we'll talk about the physicals because I think the mentals on this one are just so fascinating. So with a Nux Vomica, it's the person who really can benefit from Nux Vomica is either a type A personality or they're in that type A kind of um, like place in their life. So they're typically very ambitious, very competitive, very confident, strong personalities. These are high achievers. They can come across as arrogant, and they're typically a lot in their head, lots of mental work. Now I want to talk about these mentals for a second because you think of like ambitious, competitive, high achievers, overly confident and everything like that. That can come with a negative connotation. And I want us to remember that like these these people are the people, these are the movers and shakers in the world. These are people that are getting stuff done. And so there is a goodness to these kind of personality qualities. What happens is sometimes they go way out of balance. And that's when we can use Nux Vomica to kind of bring them in balance. So the main focus of this remedy in the mental sphere is on work and achievement. So they're always thinking, mostly they're thinking about work, they're thinking about the problems, they're solving problems, they're thinking about what they're going to do, what they're going to achieve, what the next thing is. And as a result of that, they can become impatient and irritable. And this all stems from that idea of too much. It's just too much thinking, it's too much focus on achievement, really to the detriment of that life balance. And so the irritability oftentimes comes from this the like they can't move fast enough.
Right.
So any of you who have, that spouse that is sitting in traffic and you're 3 cars back from the red light and the light turns green and your spouse is laying on the horn.
Mhm.
It's the impediment to move forward. They're going to get frustrated at work. They're going to get frustrated at the cashiers. They're going to get frustrated in traffic. The, you know, Prone to road rage because it's all about like moving forward. So whatever is getting in the way of moving forward, that's going to create irritation and irritability. And most people cannot move fast enough for them.
Right.
So because of this, they often live on stimulants. They're going to have a lot of
Mhm.
coffee. They might use alcohol. They might use amphetamines. Other recreational drugs, and they use them because they think that they're keeping the edge on for them. But what it's doing is overtaxing their system,
Right. Yeah.
and that's why they get irritable, and then eventually they work themselves into this collapse state.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at Nux Vomica for the holiday season of eating and say overindulgence. Nux Vomica meets it,
Right.
right? A lot of the
Yep.
symptoms associated with GI distress, and I've talked about Nux Vomica also in its benefit as a liver polycrest, not just stomach and digestion, but all of that. But there again, deep layers and levels when we get to the emotional realities of these remedies,
Yeah.
and some of them will match up. And this is not to say if you have none of those emotional states, but you have overindulged that, oh, Nux Vomica is not right for me because it's not these are things that at a lower potency level, we're not going that deep into that emotional realm, but you're responding to something that just, hey, it came up because I did this. And then,
Yep.
it becomes a one time and a once in a while visit.
So we'll expand on that when we talk about the physicals. just to kind of finish up with the mentals, you
Hmm.
want to think about this remedy as helpful for your corporate executives, your competitive athletes, anyone in your family that has intense personalities, or when maybe you have an intense personality, or you're in a state of intensity, periods of overwork in your life. Insomnia, this is a great insomnia remedy when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're solving problems. If you wake up and you just have thoughts running through like a hamster wheel, Nux probably isn't gonna help. But if you're solving problems, Nux will probably help get you back to sleep. You can even use this for premenstrual irritability.
Hmm.
It's not the first one I think about for PMS, but it's a good one to think about. Anger and frustration, and especially where there's a tendency to break things. So think about your younguns that like they get mad and they want to throw something, or think about yourself. If you get so frustrated, you may be able to resist the urge to throw something, but you sure feel like it on the inside. I
Yeah.
think we've all been there, right? And then the last thing that I think about is great sensitivity to stimulation. So the noise is too much, the lights are too much, the odor is too much, the smells are, everything. It's just all too much. So this is actually a great remedy for, I am married to a corporate executive and he thinks a lot, he's always processing lots of big decisions, all that kind of stuff. And when he's struggling with sleep because he's waking up in the middle of the night and he's processing all the problems, that's when Nux Vomica comes into play for him.
Really nice expansion on the Nux Vomica journey and story. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Anything else we want to talk about Nux heading into the overindulgence season physically before we go into the homeopathic hit, which is a somewhat obscure remedy?
Yeah, so physically, just think, this is all GI issues, cramping, stomach pains, sharp pains in the abdomen. It can even be for constipation, overindulgence. You've just had way too much. So everybody that's going to have turkey dinner and you end up on the couch afterwards with your belly full, all bloated, you've had too much. And we all do it. You do it. you know, Take a dose of Nux Vomica after you eat. And, pass it. This is a great way to pass it around to your family, because instead of reaching for Tums, or
Hmm.
something else to kind
I
of
grew
settle
up
your
on those allopathic suppressants. I know. Yeah.
right. Let's reach for Nux Vomica. I like this. I think everybody should have it in a 30C and a 200C in their home.
Hmm. Yep.
So
Have those kits at the ready. We'll build on that as well. And if you want more or access to this, remember Lisa Rooney's available 24/7. She doesn't sleep because she takes her. No, I'm just teasing. She does sleep, honestly, but she'll get back to you if you message her. Again, vibrantlife247.com. And remember, if you want the coaching, she's offering $100 off for RSB Show family members. And if you guys are here listening or watching, you're part of that. And just mention it to
yeah.
Lisa if you leave a message or message an email or however it is.
Yeah, just go to my website, go to the Work With Me page and get on and schedule a discovery call with me. It's just 20 minutes. We're going to talk on the phone. It's completely free. And just make sure you mention that you heard about me through RSB, and then I'll make sure I apply it, when we figure out what package is best for you.
Awesome. Awesome. So that leads us into, I don't know, it's kind of, again, some of these remedies, because we've done so many, Super Don's digging deep and we're finding ones that I'm like, I never worked with this one either,
Yeah.
And that happens. There's so many, but it's fun to explore anyway as an option should you need to. So let's do the homeopathic hit of the day.
Playing all of the homeopathic hits every day, right here on the Robert Scott Bell Show.
And once again, thank you to Lisa Rooney for supporting us here on the Robert Scott Bell Show to bring homeopathy back to its rightful place alongside everything else as a choice and option. Thanks to Trinity School of Natural Health. They have homeopathy as well supported there. And our friends at Folium PX, Bobry, shout out to you and appreciate your support, as well as Ascent Nutrition. All of these things integrated and work beautifully with what we're talking about here, including today's remedy, Calotropis gigantea. This sounds like something I would have watched on Japanese anime cartoons in my youth. Calotropis gigantea, remedy often indicated for skin conditions, some rheumatism, and I add this directly, syphilis, even though people don't like to talk about that stuff. But you'll see some other references in this remedy. It is a botanical starting point. It's known as a crown flower or the giant milkweed. There it is in, I guess we could say, AI imagery. how it's made kind of anthropomorphized because it's now got a thumbs up. But this is a remedy that is often used a lot, you'll see, for skin indications, but some for rheumatic joint type issues and some for respiratory too. But I think the biggest thing you'll see is skin. Skin keeps coming up. And of course, when you see that, whether it's eczema, psoriasis, ulcerations, itching things, they all relate back to the syphilitic manifestations, secondary symptoms of syphilis. And in the Materia Medica, they even reference, mercury was used as a drug, but we can use it as a homeopathic safely. They can't do it as a drug, of course. Digestive system issues, nausea and vomiting of bile, pretty intense stuff. Rheumatic and joint pains, swelling of knees, stiffness and inability to walk, pains in the hands and feet. So there's a lot of things here we can unpack, and I don't have time to go fully into it. But if you are at a point where you're addressing something and none of the other remedies are hitting it, then you start going deeper to a remedy like this. And it may or may not definitively have syphilis in its in your backstory or whatever. We talk about the miasms, the infections in previous generations playing themselves out as well. But it's important to know that. And you can start tracking back into your own medical history or family history. Again, potencies from low to medium to high, working with someone like, of course, Lisa to get more intense there. We can always come back to complementary remedies like sulfur, but I've often remedied, or let's say recognize that sulfur seems to be the remedy for everything, but doesn't work for a lot of people today for a lot of reasons, which maybe we can go into. But one of my favorites, of course, is bryonia for many reasons, including its liver polycrest, and arsenicum album could be helpful here as well. So as we conclude, remember these homeopathic hits and these extended homeopathic hits with Lisa Rooney are not meant to replace a doctor if you have or want one, but to support your efforts to make the healing happen that you're after. Not that I think you should have, or Lisa even does, or any government agency, but we want you to have the freedom to know about this so you can make better choices. And simple as that. So had you ever worked with this remedy? Because I hadn't.
No, I had not worked with this remedy, and I went and, just kind of tried to do a deep dive on it. There's not a ton of information about it. It's a little bit more of an obscure remedy. I think what's really interesting is that, they talk about the secondary symptoms of syphilis, where mercury has been used, but it's stalling. Like we can't push it further with mercury. So we need to,
Right.
Go in with a deeper remedy. And that's exactly what you were talking about. Sometimes we get to a point with a remedy where the remedy has its sphere of action, we have exhausted its sphere of action. It has done everything that it can do within the body, and then we have to go deeper. And so with this particular remedy, the skin issues, the rheumatism, the joint pain, all that falls in that syphilitic miasm.
Yeah.
So, I went up and I was like, okay, if it's something that's used for syphilis, let me look at the miasm. And, the syphilitic miasm is all about destruction. So it's ailments and diseases that are causing destruction in the body. The body is breaking down as a result of it.
Yeah.
And so we have these really great remedies, these first line remedies, but sometimes we need to go a little bit deeper, and this might be one we need to go deeper in.
That is that picture. You picked up on it right away, which I knew you would. It's so enjoyable to get together with you, Lisa, and do this. I'm so grateful that you're part of this, and I hope you all appreciate it as well. And we have one quick question before we wrap up from Yolanda, daughter who's pregnant, has heartburn, classic, digestive issues during pregnancy. Is Nux Vomica okay?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, there's no major concerns, with remedies during pregnancy. There's, I would say that if you're working on a chronic issue, I would definitely work with someone, throughout your pregnancy. If you're having issues, throughout your pregnancy, I would highly recommend that you work with a homeopath. But yeah, that heartburn. Now, I'll tell you, for heartburn, I really like Nat Foss in a 6X.
Yeah.
I actually used that in my pregnancy. That was one of the remedies that I used in my pregnancy.
Very good. Very good. And also, I just will remedy the birth process if you need it. If you're having a difficult time softening the cervix, look into colophyllum as a homeopathic remedy, and it can be used in preparation for a great delivery.
Yes.
So, Lisa, thank you so much. It's so great to be with you. I can't wait for the next journey already into our extended homeopathic hits.
Hey.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. What is she doing?
Is it going to work?
Let's see. Oh,
There
it
it
did.
goes.
Look, she's got homeopathic magic. She made hearts with her hand on the screen. I can't do that. So y'all check it out. Vibrant Life 24/7. and get a coaching session. You can schedule a 20-minute free call and follow up and mention the RSB show, and you're going to be covered and get $100 off. And have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I can't wait to talk to you again real soon.
Me too. And I hope all your listeners have a great Thanksgiving too.
Yeah, and keep submitting your homeopathic questions for Lisa. When she comes back, we get to go deeper with her on that. That's so much fun.
Yep.
And next hour, we've got another super duper powerful female healer, Liana Werner Gray, who overcame cancer with food, for goodness sake. The Earth Diet coming up next. We've got a lot to talk about with more Maha, from homeopathy to food and everything in between.
Yep.
God bless you, Lisa. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Mwah.
Remember, y'all, the power to heal is truly yours.